Hello, everybody. With me having a cold, I'm drinking.
What?
I'm drinking tea.
No,
we've upped
you.
We've the pinnacle of health.
You have the most iron forged immune system I've ever seen.
I do. The way that I forge it is by just letting every invader in, and I fight them to the death. Eventually,
it's like a cast iron skillet where you let the shit from
flavor.
the last thing you cooked just flavor it. Yeah,
it's what is that fact? We're 99% gut amoebas or something like that. So I'm just adding to the party here, trying to get up to 99.1%. I'm drinking tea. Clay's drinking Romulan ale.
I'm starting a new tradition. Every show, I will be having a little bit of my wonderful Romulan ale from. I honestly, Star Trek Spirits. This is not a plug. It was a plug that one time.
A long time ago.
That one time that they sent us free stuff.
Yep.
That was a plug.
Oh, this was not part of the free. You bought this.
No, I got this for Christmas a couple years ago.
Oh, that's good.
This is me working my way through the bottle. Is what this is. I'm wondering. I might have to drink less of it next time, but I'm wondering if I can get it to hold out until we're done with Voyager. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do it once a week.
Just drink it every time. Every time you have a good episode, have a little bit, and I'm sure you'll make it to the end of. The end of Voyager.
Right. Well, I was hoping if I could make it to the end. I still have a bottle of the Star Trek wine that I've actually been saving for when we finish all of the series. So that's going to be on my shelf for another 6 years or whatever.
Well, listen, with the way I get sick, we might not have time, Clay. So let's just crack it open now and pour one.
Well,
out.
I'm happy I can start today and pour one out for dead Neelix.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good callback. That's why you're on the show, here to talk about Mortal Coil. It is the 12th episode of the 4th season of Star Trek Voyager. It came out on December 17th, 1997, an early Christmas present for Star Trek fans everywhere. Written by Brian Fuller, directed by Alan Croker. Croker, get it? In-universe date 51449.2.
Croker? Hardly even know her.
In this episode called Mortal Coil, after being killed on an away mission and then revived by Seven's Borg nanoprobes, Neelix finds himself in deep existential and spiritual crises, questioning his faith and the meaning of his existence.
Do you think they left some money on the table by not having a scene where Harry Kim says, "I wish I was revived by Seven's Borg nanocoils"?
Anything to get her Borg parts inside me. He'd be down. Is Harry Kim in this episode? I don't think he is, right?
Briefly.
Is he at the party?
Neelix gives him a cup of really strong coffee.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he's studying for something. Mortal Coil. So here's, I'll open this with, I was surprised. I looked this up, and apparently this is an extremely highly regarded Voyager episode. It's on a lot of like top 20 lists and like top 50 for the franchise and stuff like that. I didn't know anything about it. And it's a Neelix episode, which starts you off kind of prejudiced, I suppose. Yeah, hesitant against it. I didn't think this was good enough to get on any list like that, but this is kind of a weird one. I liked what it was doing, but I never really bought into it at the same time. Core to it is, this is really kind of a minor thing, but I think it's kind of a Voyager trait. The whole opening half, I was just going, Neelix is religious? And it's, and like, I feel that maybe on other series, they would have characters who weren't, like, you weren't aware, and it wouldn't seem so obvious, but for some reason, it just stuck out to me. I was like, Neelix has never mentioned any of this before. Like, I didn't realize this was a core to Neelix's thing. And I think in maybe a better, great episode, you'd be kind of willing to overlook that and be like, well, they just made a story for Neelix, and I'm willing to. He's gone through a lot. I buy that he's religious and stuff like that. It just got to a place where I didn't feel it worked as well as I thought it might have, and it never really grabbed me at any point, even though I thought it was kind of a neat, good concept, and I think it works for Neelix. It's like a good Neelix idea, but I got to the end and was just like, I don't think any of that really landed for me, unfortunately. It wasn't bad, but it just wasn't great either at the same time.
Yeah. I really liked it, but I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I think it's tough with a character like Neelix because he does get so little screen time that there is plenty of stuff we don't know about him. And I think the episode would be that much more devastating in a way that is probably harder to swallow if Neelix was previously known as like this deeply religious character who in this episode he finds out that God doesn't exist.
Chakotay has like a tricorder that tells him there's no God.
Yeah, like that would be a bit much, I think. So I understand they're trying to pick a character to do this with, and Neelix probably makes the most sense.
But doesn't the story need him to be kind of at least established to have a backstory?
I don't know.
With it? I feel like Chakotay is more like if Chakotay was.
That's what I'm talking about, though. I don't know if I think it would be too heavy. I mean, it's a pretty heavy episode as it is.
Yeah.
But if you took someone who's like part of their entire identity is their religion, and dismantled that in front of them, and then left them, despite what this episode tries to do at the end, clearly a shattered husk.
Yeah.
I think that would be a bit much. So if you take someone like Neelix and kind of throw this in there as someone who's like, yeah, okay, I mean, he's not going to church every day, but he's got the little tree and the way that some people are. He's religious in the way that people are like, yeah, and when I die, I'm going to go to heaven and see my.
I like that they tied in that his family has all been killed or whatever happens to them, and he's like, well, at least I was thinking that I'd be able to go get to see them. But doesn't this just really prove that? What is Chakotay's afterlife? He communicates with dead ancestors. Like, so it doesn't. Yeah. Isn't Chakotay's version of the afterlife the one that is real?
It is tough to do an episode like this when you have previously established characters that can actually talk to their dead relatives.
Neelix is just unlucky in love and in life and in death.
I think it's one of those things where, like, if you can take this as an episode in a vacuum, I think it's a lot better than if you really try to parse it out as far as Star Trek lore goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked what it was doing. I liked the questions that it was playing with. I don't know if it really. I kept thinking the entire time, like, what is the resolution of this going to be? Like, I feel like there's only one resolution that there can be, or there's two. Either he's wrong, and somehow the afterlife does exist, or he finds something in in life that is.
Takes the place
enriching
of it.
Enough that takes the place of it, which is obviously what they go with. I don't believe that for a second. Like, that change comes so quick at the end where it's just like he's about to kill himself because he's like, if all of this is fake, then what's the point of anything at all? He's having an existential crisis, and Chakotay is like, but that little girl needs to go to sleep, and you're the only one who can do it. Doesn't that mean something? And he's like, you know what? You're right. It does.
You're absolutely correct. It does.
And then at that point, he's like, I give them credit for having him not play it as though it's a complete change of position.
Yeah.
But I think they probably, if they had played a little bit more bittersweet, where he's a little bit more kind of like still kind of depressed
bothered by it.
About this, I think it would have landed a little bit better. But it's a tough story to tell because you have him going through this thing where he has at least a casual understanding of what the afterlife is going to be, which it is then shown to him that's not what it is after he literally dies. And then he comes back and he's going through the whole thing. I think the lowest point for me in this was when he goes into the "you should have left me dead" thing, because that's just, I feel like that's a little bit too easy of a story point.
Well, doesn't that tie into the weirdness of, oh, there's no afterlife, I better kill myself? Like, what's the logic of that action?
I think it's all stemming from this depression that he's in, that he's hoping to see his relatives again in the afterlife.
Yeah.
And now that he knows that's not a thing, then there's really nothing
no
left
reason
for him
to live
for.
Yeah.
He's he is someone whose entire family was killed. So
it is. I think that's
it affects
another
people in intense ways.
I think that's another mark in the way of. It's tough for me to buy this as a Neelix trait, really, because like I guess you could argue that Neelix is using his happy-go-lucky thing to like mask this deep insecurity, but I don't think he's even been written that way, really. Like I know that he has trauma in his past, but he comes across to me as someone who has had a lot of bad stuff happen to him, but he's always been kind of a happy-go-lucky character. It's not that he's hiding anything. It's that's what he is authentically. And so when his sort of like regression to this depressive state just strikes me as he's not the right character for this. I don't really think that this is a Neelix thing. I think that Ethan Phillips, I think that's his name, does a good job with Neelix. And I would prefer that this be a kind of Neelix that's on the show as opposed to just happy-go-lucky morale officer Neelix. But with what they've established through 4 seasons, I have a harder time buying into it, I guess.
I would say maybe because they've never touched on that before, but like I don't need him to be Ed O'Neill from Wayne's World.
No.
He's like the guy running the donut shop, and then when he gets a second, he's like, have you ever seen the smoke that rises out of the wound of a man killed in the winter? I think best part of both movies.
I think it would add something. I just need him. If they wanted to go this way, I understand that they have referenced his sad past. Maybe just, he even recently lost Cass, and he's like, yeah, that's fine. Whatever, right. Whatever happens, that's the way it is.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that. I think the biggest problem for me, like again, if you're looking at this in a vacuum, I think it works decently well, and I think it's one of the better episodes of the season.
Yeah,
because it is asking some pretty big questions and doing it in a fairly Star Trek-y way.
Yeah.
But I just don't buy that ending at all. Like I think
the Chakotay talks them down ending is that.
Yeah, I think for something like this, it has to be a conclusion he comes to himself. I don't think you can really argue anybody off of this particular ledge. I feel like it has to be a ledge that he comes to himself,
Right. Maybe the little girl talking to him and Naomi.
Yeah, like I having that interaction with the little girl more organically, I think might have been the way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think maybe that's the other problem is while I liked what the problem they were grappling with, I don't really know if they had a take on it.
No.
Like I like I said, the stuff that he's going through ends up being fairly stock, come back from the dead stuff. Like I brought this up. Relatively recently on this show or the other ones. There's an episode of Buffy that does something similar where she comes back from the dead and she's very depressed about it. And all of her friends are really excited and no one can figure out why she's depressed. And then eventually she tells them that I think that I was in heaven and you guys pulled me out of heaven to make you feel better. And that's at least a twist on this where there's a take on it where it's really affecting the character in kind of an interesting and unique way. Whereas this, it's just the same kind of like, he's back. Well, I don't know if I should be back. Oh, but you should have left me dead. I mean, it's kind of standard stuff that doesn't really have a spin on this idea as much as I do like the idea.
Yeah. I think that the pointlessness of the like it's a hard excuse me. It's hard to fit into excuse me, Star Trek in some ways because what's the point of am I missing something? What's the point of the Borg tech being used here? Why is it necessary that he's dead for 18 hours instead of one of these things where it's the cold open is he's dead, he's brought to sickbay, and as we've seen in Star Trek, he's just kind of defibbed back to life. They're like, that was close, right. Neelix, like you I don't really know what's gained from him being dead long enough that the Borg nanoprobes are required to bring a character back to life in a way that makes you go, why didn't Seven bring that other person back to life that died in that other episode? But like that's kind of
that other person. That other person wasn't as multifaceted in his importance to the ship as Neelix is.
Is this person in the main credits? No, you don't get to survive. I think it's just that it's like that felt a little bit tacked on, and it felt like it was taking the place of whatever they want to say is doing this Voyager trick of instead of what you want to talk about, you're going to replace it with this sci-fi angle that doesn't really add anything at all by the end of it. And I think I don't super connect with it because I don't personally have a religious background that makes this story feel like it's necessarily interesting to me. Like there's no, I guess my alternate would be like Neelix discovers that there is an afterlife outside of Chakotay's. Like his afterlife is the one that's actually out there and that they want to succeed and go, well, that's interesting, I guess, for Star Trek. But the point that I view it at is like a character who I don't find this to be central to his identity learns something that I already believe and therefore has an epiphany about it. And outside of the quality of the episode, it's not something that's immediately going to grab me because I have a hard, I don't, in that case that you're going to do it, you really have to sell Neelix's commitment to this idea to me. And this episode doesn't do that. He just kind of believes it. And so if I'm not sold on Neelix, this being a central part, a very important part that's being like destroyed in front of him, I can't latch onto it because I'm outside of the idea of thinking that it's even a possibility that might happen to him, which is unfortunate.
Sure.
But it's that, and that's a very personal, subjective take on it. But it was a reason that I just had kind of it's like semi-obvious from my point of view, you know, and it's like unfortunate, but that's my subjective take on it. And I don't know. I don't think that the Borg nanoprobe story didn't even provide the hook of a sci-fi angle where it's like, oh, at least I kind of like this Borg haywire thing that they've got going on, but he just zombifies himself over and over again, and then that's the end of it.
Yeah, I think the Borg thing was just because they needed to separate him from what you were talking about, everybody else being sort of defibrillated back to life. Like, you know, because that happens all the time now.
Yeah.
Where there's people who are dead for 5 minutes who get zapped back to life. And in Star Trek, there's even a bigger window where that can happen. And it's always resuscitation, right? Whereas I think they needed him to be unequivocally dead.
Yeah.
You know, he needed to be Marley dead, you know. So 18 hours is a long time to be dead. So
is it just
that's when your brain starts turning to jelly.
Yeah, it's the Talaxians are like, well, you don't actually get to the afterlife until 16 hours after you've been dead. So you have to wait at least 18 hours to figure it out.
That's what I liked about Chakotay's reasoning, where he's like, well, I don't know, maybe it takes longer. Who knows? Who knows how long it takes to get to the afterlife?
I like the attempted comedy too with Neelix is like, Janeway's like, well, he's dead. Let's honor his life with his Talaxian death ritual. And it's just Tuvok being like, this is too much. I'm not going to read the whole thing. This is just too much. These Talaxians don't know what the fuck they're doing. Yeah.
Do you think it would be more interesting if the same events happened, but the crisis point was Chakotay? So say,
like the faith of crisis, the crisis of faith moment.
So Neelix dies, and Neelix comes back, and he's like, shit, my people always told me that there was an afterlife, and I pretty clearly have found evidence that is not the case.
Yeah.
And so he now has that going on, but Chakotay is the focus of the
He's
of
more
the crisis.
impacted. Neelix doesn't really care. He's just kind of like intrigued by this idea.
Or maybe he does care because, you know, that would if that's what you believe, regardless of how hard you believe it, it's still going to impact you. You know, you're still coming back from the dead. Dead for 18 hours.
I think that fixes my issue with it, which is that Neelix is not the believer, because if Neelix is just like, you know, I'd been told that there was an afterlife and I was dead for 18 hours and I didn't see anything. So I guess there is no afterlife. Because I do agree that if you flip this and made it somehow a crisis for Chakotay, like he was like, am I just hallucinating on peyote while I'm doing this? That's more of a, he's the character that at least I would be like, well, they have established this guy as like a spiritual leader, and that's his core belief. He's got the face tattoos and everything. I would be down with that, absolutely.
Because then I feel like if you have that same, maybe you don't go as far as they do in this episode and have Chakotay killing himself or attempting to kill himself. But like then if you have his crisis point dissipated by Neelix, who then gives him that speech about like, listen, I don't know what's out there for you. I don't know. I wouldn't take my experience to be emblematic of your own, but all I can tell you from what I have experienced is that it's the things in front of you now,
right,
that are the things that are worth living for.
I totally buy that as a Neelix outlook right from the get go. Yeah. He's a fly by the seat of his pants character in that way.
Yeah,
yeah. I would. I guess that narratively, your tough part of that script is making an authentic handoff where Chakotay buys into Neelix's visions enough where he just kind of goes like, oh, this guy had a hell of an experience. I guess I have to question it myself. You might just have it just be completely with Chakotay, and that he is the one who gets shot by the laser beam at the start. And
I just think that's too much. I think it's too harsh. It's
just because
too harsh
you break him at the end with the
yeah, because I think if you go this way where Chakotay doesn't actively experience that, then having Neelix give him a speech like that is a much more optimistic outlook than this, which is Neelix is he's a broken man. Like he ends this episode, as much as he tries to put on that, oh yeah, it's worth living. So because for reading, I can read stories to this little kid who's not mine, who's going to hate me in 3 years. I think that's just like, I don't find that this episode is satisfactorily resolved for me.
Yep.
Because I don't think it's satisfactorily resolved for Neelix. And so I think if you put like a bit of a buffer between Neelix and Chakotay in that way, where Chakotay is having a crisis of faith based on things that have happened to Neelix, then at least there's some wiggle room there that he can come to the conclusion and not be, not the episode doesn't end with him in the mirror like rubbing his tattoo off of his forehead, until he bleeds or whatever.
I agree. I do think I would buy Chakotay in the setup a little bit better. I liked the, I think Voyager's kind of an unserious show, and I thought that this one at least took itself somewhat serious. And I appreciate the effort to like have a story be about something like this, and I thought that Voyager did a decent job with it. What'd you think of the...
Well, I was just going to say, I thought his dreams were
I was just
terrifying.
about to ask you. I was about to ask you about the dreams, yeah.
I thought those were really good. That was probably some of the scariest, creepiest stuff they've done in the show.
Yeah, I like the sort of like trying to catch up with his sister stuff. She's always just at like a distance. I thought that was pretty well done. I liked everyone's weird energy in the things. Like when Janeway says something weird to him, and I thought that was pretty good.
It was very The Shining, when all the ghosts show up for the party.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, wonderful party.
Yeah, I liked it.
Harry Kim's getting a BJ from a guy in a dog costume.
Would you, I guess the minor B plot in this one, well, I guess what'd you think of the very end with the girl, Naomi sitting in the forest wonderland of Talaxius?
Yeah, sure, whatever.
Afterlife.
I don't buy the ending at all as a resolution. Like, I know what they're going for, but it's like, it's just, this is something that Neelix is, based on the way he reacts in this episode, this is something he's going to be dealing with for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And it's just, that's a really tough concept to wrap up that quickly.
He doesn't. But yes, I would agree with you.
I liked it in the dream when he finally talks to his sister, and his sister's like, "It's all fake. We just rot in the ground, you stupid son of a bitch," and then bursts into dust, like she picked the wrong cup.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. You're just worm food, Neelix. Did I guess the minor B plot is the 7 storyline, I guess. 7
I like the 7 stuff.
Yeah.
I thought her when she gets the advice from Janeway that she should just listen to a conversation and then chime in. I thought that was pretty funny. That was good stuff.
Could have gone harder with it. I guess you're in a tough spot where what the Borg are doing to small children is probably kind of horrific, but so they have to walk a fine line about whether or not they should say too much or too little. But I think I really like Jerry Ryan in this episode. I think she's very good as 7. She has a funny energy.
The one real detail that I really liked was when she referred to Neelix as the cadaver.
Yeah.
And then the doctor's like, yeah, and they say my bedside manner is bad. Like that's a really good word to use to show the dehumanization or detalaxianization in this case of his body.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked it. I still think the Borg nanoparticles are bizarre. That's the way that they just do. But I thought she was very good. She has a conversation with Tuvok in this one, right? They're walking in the hallway. I like her and Tuvok talking to each other. I think that's a good pairing.
Yeah. I like them together too because it's.
He's a good mentor. She's the best mentee that he's had. He's had a couple, I think, through the series, and she's the best one.
Yeah, I think. I like her and Harry to a certain extent.
Yeah.
I don't like how. I don't know how horny it is all the time, but I think her and Tuvok is nice because Tuvok. I like that she seems to see Tuvok as more of a analog for herself than, say, the Doctor.
Yeah.
Because I think it would be really easy for her to see the Doctor as like her, where I think it's closer to Tuvok is what they're going for.
Yes. She has a Tuvok has a nice. Tuvok is a good sounding board for her in a way that the other human characters don't fight back with her a little bit. Like Tuvok doesn't get emotional about it, so their conversations are a nice like stream of sort of logic stuff where there's not like I feel like some of the human characters take more of a like, whoa, you're just a Borg character, and Tuvok is more open-minded, I suppose, to that kind of stuff, and at least listens and gives sort of strange Vulcan takes on things that she says. So I like those two when they're paired together. Seems to just be Carrie because I'm already forgetting. They established it in Year of Hell. They had the alternate reality where they were, I think that's where this whole thing started, where they started talking to each other after that, but maybe I'm wrong.
Sure. I don't remember. That was like a week ago.
It was a week ago. It feels like a year. Anything else about this one? Mortal Coil? No?
Yeah, not really. B'Elanna has a very brief appearance in this episode. I think she's got like one line in the dream sequence. I don't know if she's in it at all for the rest of it.
Yep. No, nothing else. I just maybe it's just we'll save it for final thoughts. What I think about the sort of afterlife stuff. So we'll go to Patreon comments for now. Thanks everybody for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can go to patreon.com/thepenskyfile and leave your thoughts about upcoming episodes. We read them on the podcast, and then you can hear them on the podcast. So we're going to start with Mortal Coil. I'll send this one to you first, Clay. Once I open up the Discord.
I swear we must have the highest average of coughing and throat clearing of any podcast.
I can't edit all this out. It's just too much. I need some sort of AI.
I even have like a cough blocker button, and I don't always remember to use it, so I apologize.
It's the winter. It's the middle of winter. Everyone's coughing. Everyone's dying.
We'll pretend like it gets better in the summer.
Hay fever.
Mortal Coil. I would not trust Neelix with kids. The last 2-year-old he met. Is this from Kyle?
Mm-hmm. Oh, Dinosaur, this is Kyle Barrett.
I would not trust Neelix with kids. The last 2-year-old he met, he started fucking. Neelix is an absolute plank if his reaction to learning there is nothing after death is to try and kill himself. Mm-hmm. I remember hating this episode the first time I saw it because it makes death meaningless with the magic nanobots and the fact they prevent Neelix from killing himself rather than cheering the fucker on. But this time But this time I thought it wasn't quite so terrible, and dare I say, I felt a little sympathetic towards his existential crisis. I also think Brian Fuller is one of the best writers of Seven, with the well-written, relatable autistic at a party scene being a highlight. 3 out of 5.
The Onion needs the autistic reporter to interview Seven, the autistic Star Trek member. Taxel Bear says, Mortal Coil, I know that both of you are disappointed that this episode didn't end after just 5 minutes with Neelix being permanently dead. Jokes aside, I think that exploring how religion and spiritualism develop in the face of space travel, a universe with thousands of advanced species, time travel, etc., is a worthwhile endeavor, though one that got diluted by Chakotay simply switching on the spirits and scientifically proving that the supernatural exists or something.
Yeah, that's the tough part with all this. As we said, it's like, does every race have their own afterlife?
Yeah.
And what is that like? Is there...
It's the same question on Earth.
Some of them don't exist. Some of them do exist. I don't know.
Well, logically, either all the religions on Earth are correct or none of them are correct. Like those are your two options, really. Or one, I suppose. One could be exactly right, but who knows? Yeah, it expands.
It would be great if at the end of existence, whatever God there is was like, I gave you guys like 5,000 years and you just couldn't get the right one. I gave you lots of hints and you got real close, but you never got it. So nobody gets the chocolate factory. Everybody's going to hell.
It's the Talaxian. Star Trek Voyager came the closest, but it's not a tree. It's just a small shrub. Malo Perverso says, Mortal Coil, I believe I speak for everyone here when I loudly say / write that they should have just let Neelix die.
I mean, I'm down for Neelix from this point on being like a grizzled PTSD veteran.
Yes. I'd be fine with that. Him screaming at everybody about how we're all going to die no matter what happens. This is JC Superstar.
Mortal Coil, a dramatization of a crisis of faith, is very relatable. There are also significant character moments. Seven acknowledges the varied usefulness of Neelix to the crew, and Chakotay reminds us that his character has always had underutilized potential when he proves to be an earnest friend and mentor to Neelix. His final conversation with Neelix in the transporter room was unexpectedly moving. Is the description of the Great Forest meant to imply life on Voyager itself? Prejudices against Neelix notwithstanding, 4 Chakotay sport coats out of 5.
He's a dapper fellow.
Everybody did bust out some very unique looking formal wear.
That was some intense formal wear.
Talaxian Christmas.
Changeling says, Mortal Coil, at the end when Neelix was trying to kill himself, I couldn't but think how ballsy it would be if this was how they decided to write Neelix out of the show instead of Cass for season 4. That being said, I thought the show was surprisingly good. I have to admit, Ethan Phillips made me feel some emotion. Also, it's kind of funny how Neelix is both one of Cass's lungs and some of Seven's nanoprobes. By the end of the series, he's also going to have Tuvok's ears, Chakotay's tattoo, and Janeway's hair. 4 coming back from the dead for 18 hours and not ending up mentally challenged out of 5.
I forgot about the lung thing.
Yep. Can't take that back. Matt Ross says, Mortal Coil, I always makes me uneasy and question my own concerns of death, and I appreciate the episode for that feeling. Neelix I have always had a love-hate feeling towards. When he's made to be comic relief, I think his talents are wasted. When he's in more serious tones, I think Ethan Phillips is great at the role, and I appreciate the acting. At least we know that the Borg think the Kazon are trash as well. Too bad we can't use Borg stuff to revive everyone. Must be main character specific. 3 hopes for better menus out of 5.
I forgot about the Kazon thing. That was pretty funny. It made me, I was like, oh, so the Borg are kind of racist, sort of, a little bit.
They don't add anything, which is also the show making fun of itself.
Yeah, that's a great way. Imagine if they met a species who were just trash people, but they were just really happy, and it's like, what is going on? You have the technology, you have the smarts, to fly through the stars, and then someone's like, yeah, but you know what? If we do that, the Borg are going to come fucking assimilate us. We don't have to worry about the Borg because they all think we are trash.
Yeah.
So
it's a good disguise.
Now who's the smart one? Starfleet.
It's a good disguise for the Borg. What did I just read? I read Matt Ross.
Just a bunch of Monty Python characters running around, picking up dirt, wearing those weird handkerchiefs on their heads, trying to return dead parrots.
It's a good Woody sound. This is Jaron Hatch.
I used to hate Neelix when I was a kid, but as time has gone on, I've warmed up to him, and this was the episode that kick-started my re-evaluation. Neelix is best when he is characterized as the eternal optimist who makes his pain and fears behind... optimist who masks his pain and fears behind that optimism. Watching that character, who is always seeing the best in everything, come face-to-face with his own mortality is pretty compelling stuff. However, in classic Voyager fashion, the execution leaves a little to be desired, particularly in regards to Chakotay's cringe-inducing dream therapy. Still, I have to give props to the writers sticking to the nothing after death concept rather than pulling out some, well, those neutrinos are spinning the wrong way, and so maybe there is something after death bullshit. 4 random seconds of Naomi Wildman sitting in a fantasy land before the end credits roll out of 5. The beginning of that dream did have big Pure Moods energy, which was fun.
Yep. Grappler John Zorn says, I wonder if, like Kafka, the Voyager writers would go out to bars after work and cackle with their friends over the tortures they wrote for their protagonists. Unlike Kafka, who at least permitted Gregor Samsa an apple to the brain pan to take him out of his misery, this now makes the 3rd time they've denied Neelix a mercy killing. The show might have something to say if Neelix had responded to Chakotay's "Who else on the ship can handle monsters in the replicator?" by beaming himself into space in a final moment of clarity. Isn't there only so long one can eke out an existence on participation trophies and the pity of others? Like my aging mother, Voyager's fine with the light stuff, but has no business lifting heavy objects. 1 Kess's missing lungs out of 5.
I thought he was going to say, like my aging mother, I wish Neelix had stayed dead. Which I was going to say.
That's dark.
Maybe not the place to air that.
This is Artorias with our final comment.
Mortal Coil. Hello, darkness, my old friend. The void calls to me again, where death and life come to meet. There the fate of the soul shall sleep. When oblivion calls, there I abide, lest the chaos gods eat me alive. Emperor, protect the eternal truth is a lie. In the void I will reside from death to all eternity. The darkness is my guide. For there is no hope to the soul, for oblivion will forever hold. On a brighter side, at least the Borg realize how not even the Kazon are worthy of assimilation. 3 steps into darkness out of 5.
3 out of 5. Thanks, everybody, for leaving your thoughts about Mortal Coil, this episode of Star Trek Voyager. So I'm interested to see what you're going to give this one, Clay. It seems like you were fairly positive on it. The patrons probably give it an average of a 4, I think, maybe like a very high 3. Yeah, what did you think of this, and any final thoughts about it?
I'm going to give it a 4. I thought it was one of the better ones. Just like full stop. I like the ones where it seems like they've just considered some things,
sure.
instead of just like, I really like that this doesn't need a sci-fi B plot to really gum up the works. Like it doesn't turn into the Borg shit inside him is causing madness or something, that would feel really unnecessary. So I like that they just they use the sci-fi stuff sparingly to address an issue that is pretty relatable, I think. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's pretty good.
I think I don't know where I'm going to end up. I think I'm going to give this a 2. I think. I was honestly very surprised reading the reviews after I was done watching it that it was so highly regarded, really. I think it steps into a weird territory of it's a very good idea that ultimately kind of continues the Voyager trend of like, I wish there was just something more here to say about this, I suppose. And I think it did a lot of damage for me, just the setup of it being a Neelix story. Like, I never really grabbed hold of what this was talking about in that way. as far as like the Borg stuff, I almost feel like it's one of those episodes that's begging for some kind of thematic sci-fi angle to be plastered on top of it. And I don't know if Voyager would have done a good job with that, but I feel like one of the other series, if this was the story, there would be something that's being said there. Like because I'm now remembering the Tuvok in the Seven story, their plot line is about how the Borg live forever in the collective. Like there is a memory of them that goes on and stuff like that. And I feel that would have been nice to somehow to have Seven be a character that's talking to Neelix or something, like instead of Chakotay. Like I feel that she has a view of things that might be helpful for the episode to come to a point. Unfortunately, it's relegated to the Tuvok episode or the Tuvok conversation. So I feel it's a little bit of a missed opportunity, and it didn't really grab me the entire time that I was watching it. So I'll give it a 2 and say it wasn't a terrible 2.
I do think that Seven would have been a better choice than Chakotay.
Yeah.
Because, again, as we were saying, you run into this problem where the episode is saying that the Talaxian idea of the afterlife doesn't exist, but Chakotay still has superpowers that allows him to talk to dead relatives and go into the dream theater or whatever.
Yeah.
Not the fun kind of dream theater.
The fun kind of dream theater. Just rocking out in the background.
The fun kind of dream theater being the theater I'm not in while dream theater is playing. Where I think if Chakotay had like come at him with that spiritual stuff and Neelix rejected that, and then it was Seven that talked him down off the ledge, I think that would work better.
Mm-hmm. And just a final, because Christian signed in here on the YouTube comment. He says, I missed out on Patreon comments, but too long didn't read. I don't think the episode is particularly good, but the ending with Chakotay and Neelix and Naomi was sufficiently heartwarming for me to enjoy that part. So that's it.
Picked a bad time to pop in, friend. We just tore the ass right out of your entire argument.
That's it. Clay gives it a 4. I'll give it a 2. That's it for Star Trek Voyager's Mortal Coil. We are about to shuffle off of this podcast episode. So, thanks everybody for listening. Patreon.com/The Pensky File. If you want to leave your thoughts there, we'll read them on the podcast. Otherwise, there's a whole bunch of podcasts out there you can access. Patreon.com/The Pensky File. Clay, do you have anything you want to say?
Check out Rod and Hart Picture Show. We're covering Halloween this year on Patreon. What the fuck month are we in? January still? Is this February?
It'll be February when this comes out.
February is Halloween 2, obviously, which is a pretty interesting movie. It's kind of like if Halloween were like a vaporwave movie, I think Halloween 2 would be a vaporwave Halloween movie, because it's a lot of like slowly walking around liminal spaces of just like dark hallways and people just kind of like hanging around.
Yep.
Then eventually they get stabbed and blood sprays everywhere. So it's got a kind of interesting vibe to it that took me a while to come around to. I don't think it's a great movie, but I enjoy watching it. And on the main show, Amanda's going to be off on vacation for a couple months, so Wes is going to be joining us for a couple episodes. We're going to do Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors, and another movie to be picked later. And my cousin, who runs a film noir podcast and website, will be joining us to do Night of the Hunter. So yeah, check that out.
Sounds good.
Badass will be back at some point. Sean's been really busy with Zorro and all that kind of stuff, so we'll get to it eventually.
Patreon.com/The Pensky File. Thanks everybody for listening. We will wrap it up here, and now we'll be back with the next episode, which is at the top here, which I have to figure out. Waking Moments. So thanks very much. And I guess your mother fell asleep. You want to say hi?
Hi.
There he goes.
Hey, buddy.
I have to put him to bed, and then I will be back. Clay, we doing a post show after this one?
Sure, that's fine.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next time.